Hey second graders, this is Social Studies Fairy here. I'm here from Africa to teach you about the contributions of ancient Egypt. What's a contribution? A contribution is something that a person does or gives to a person or group that helps them advance, become more successful, or get better in the world. Let's take a look at some examples. One example of a contribution from the ancient Egyptians is the water clock. As you can see right here, there's water coming out of this clay pot. In this clay pot, the Egyptians filled it with water. They found that if they filled it with water and watched it over a period of time, water would slowly drip out, and they would measure this water and the constant drips, and it would tell them what hour it was. So they had to do some math with it too. They used this for hundreds of years. Another example of a contribution is the 365-day calendar, as you can see here carved in stone. This is how they recorded things, and you'll learn more about that later. The Egyptians invented a calendar based on the farming seasons. There were 3 seasons, as you can see here by this chart, that they measured their year by. Each season was about 120 days long. The 3 seasons were known as the flooding season, the planting season, and the harvest season. Each season was about 3 months long, which was only 360 days. They then noticed that some of the days weren't matching with the seasons, so they decided to add in 5 extra days so that they would better match with the seasons and the weather that was going on at that time. A contribution that you may be familiar with is papyrus paper. They use this natural resource to make paper so that they could record things on or illustrate pictures on. This was a very long process. If you look over here, this is an example of the papyrus plant, which was found along the Nile River. This plant grew best along the Nile River because the soil along the river was rich and had a lot of nutrients in it because the Nile River flooded every year. They would chop these plants down, and then they would have to shave off the outer skin, which they would use for things like baskets and shoes, things that needed stronger material. They didn't let anything go to waste, so they even used the outer casing of this plant. Then they sliced the inside of the papyrus plant into long strips like you see right here. Once they were done soaking in water, they used a heavy stone or something that was heavy that they could press down on to remove the extra water out of it because they needed it to be nice and dry. Once it was done soaking in a mixture for about 6 to 12 days, they took strips of papyrus and they laid it out on a flat, smooth surface. They overlapped the strips to make it a little bit more durable and so that it would have something to stick to. Then they would have to put this in between 2 stones for another 6 to 12 days so that it would dry out and stick together to form this solid sheet of paper. So for Egyptians to make paper, it took them about 2 whole weeks just for this one sheet. This must have been a very valuable resource. Another contribution that you may be somewhat familiar with is the hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics are symbols that are used to represent letters, or some symbols even represented whole entire words. There were more than 700 hieroglyphs. Some pictures stood for whole words, and we know that the Egyptians used this because people discovered the Rosetta Stone, which is right here, which was found in Egypt by soldiers. This was a hard granite stone that was about 4 feet tall and 2.5 feet wide. That's about the height of a second grader. This stone is now located in a museum in London. Did you know that there's many different ways Egyptians read? We read from left to right. For example, we'd start off reading over here and read towards the right. However, the Egyptians read whatever way the person or image was facing. For example, if the person was facing to the right, then you would read from right to left, which is the opposite of what we do. Things that they wrote down were religious routines, government rules, poetry, major travel expeditions, and wise sayings. Finally, or at least for us, the last two contributions that we will be studying is the shaduf and the obelisk. The obelisk is a tall pyramid-like figure with 4 sides and a pointed top. They carved this out of stone. Some were up to 70 feet tall. The pharaohs ordered these huge monuments to be built for them so that they would always be remembered. They were decorated with symbols engraved in the sides, as you can see here. This influenced some of our architecture we have here today. Do you recognize this? It's the Washington Monument. A shaduf is a device that they built to help them carry large amounts of water out of the river. As you can see, it is built from a long pole that can move up and down into the river, and attached to it is a rope and a large bucket. On this side is a heavy weight, usually from a large piece of stone or water, so that it would help them make a lever so that they could easily pull down the device and then bring back up the water. This helped them a lot get water from one place to another. I hope you learned about some of the ancient Egyptian contributions. Have a great day.